Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your high-flying hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we got you covered. Today we take to the sky with the dragon pilots and their winged beasts from Hisone and Masotan. After that we grab our virtual armory and return to the world of Sword Art Online, or rather, its spin-off Gale Online. And finally, we ride our bikes to the finish line while loudly singing our favorite anime opening song in our review of Yowamushi Pedal. Get ready for takeoff, we'll be right back. Hisone Amakasu is a young cadet in the Japanese Self-Defense Force and is stationed at the Gifu Air Base. The young woman considers herself not much of a people person and took up her chosen profession to distance herself from other human beings, so not to hurt them with her candid manner of speech. However, she is soon forced into interaction as one fateful day she stumbles onto the airbase's biggest secret, a giant dragon hidden away in a hangar. As it turns out, dragons have been living among us since ancient times and can take the form of current flying vehicles to disguise themselves. Gifu's dragon, later named Masotan, chooses Hisone as his pilot by simply devouring her. After being thrown up again, Hisone's new role as the OTF's, which is short for Organic Transformed Flyer, new pilot, is forced upon her, which she rejects. But after spending some time with the uncanny beast, she realizes there is more to Masotan than meets the eye. Sorry, I had to do it. The two become friends and are soon joined by other dragon pilots to fulfill a secret destiny that will change their lives forever. So yeah, Dragon Pilot is an original anime series produced by Studio Bones that ran for 12 episodes. We have talked about Bones so many times, so I don't really need to recount their entire stellar track record. Wolf's Rain, Blood Blockade Battlefront, Mob Psycho 100, My Hero Academia, to name only a few of the highlights. Yeah, so many high-quality titles. Just from the animation standpoint alone, Bones is top tier, and this show is no exception, animation quality-wise. The design of the show is a bit more cartoony than I may be used to from Bones stuff. The character designer is Toshinao Aoki, who is also currently doing the manga adaptation of this series. And the character designs are these like cute moe blobs that look a bit like the characters from Girls' Last Tour, maybe mixed with Final Fantasy Tactics. They have no mouths. No, they have mouths but no noses. And like these squishy bodies and faces. So yeah, it's a bit more cartoony when compared to other anime styles. It's also all very cute. The dragons being the cutest, of course, with these giant cartoony eyes and everything. I mean, they can get scary too, which is intentional in certain scenes, but mostly they're just like these giant cute lizards with big noses and, like I said, giant eyes who make a lot of adorable noises. One of them kind of looks like a seal, weirdly enough. But yeah, and lots of airplane parts on their bodies, because like I said, they can transform into planes to disguise themselves. But yeah, aside from that, the backdrops are gorgeous, the animation is fluid and feels alive, everything has this nice soft watercolor look to it. And when there's actual action going on, it looks thrilling as well. But sadly, that rarely happens. Like, I expected a bit more flying exercises or maybe dogfighting from this show, or a show with this setup at least, and we really only get like big flying scenes in the first and last 2 episodes of the show. I mean, there is some flying in between, but there are not like big climaxes that happen during the flying, or there are some big action shots or a big culmination story-wise during the flying, except for, like I said, maybe 1-2 scenes sprinkled in between and then the final episodes. But which was a bit of a letdown. But yeah, in general, the show looks different but really good. It is directed by Hiroshi Kobayashi, who has mainly worked as a storyboard artist before this on stuff like Kill la Kill, Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans, and Noragami, to name only a few. He has also worked as an episode director, but his big main director gigs before this were Kimi no Irumachi, which I don't really know anything about, and Kisniver. First red flag. Because Kisniver is a show that both John and I had a lot of misgivings about, so much so that we didn't finish it. At least I didn't. You
Oh,
didn't
I
either, I
definitely
think.
didn't either.
Yeah. I mean,
I think I got 3 episodes in, maybe 2.
yeah. A lot of a very troubled show with a lot of bad character writing, and didn't feel like it knew where it was going, and it was not entertaining, and a lot of slap your forehead moments and stuff like that. Yeah. So that's already food for thought here. But hey, mistakes happen, and Kisniver definitely didn't look bad. So
Hmm.
that alone wouldn't have been enough to change my initial attitude towards the show. Had I looked up the stuff beforehand, which I almost never do because I want to go into the shows kind of, innocent. I don't know if
And,
that's the
and
right
I,
word.
I'm the exact opposite. I want to know who's writing it. I want to know who's directing it. I want to know who's doing the music, all of that sort of stuff.
Which is the smart choice, if you want to spare yourself some misery. And I might do that in the beginning, but it's
But that can also set you up for disappointment too.
that can set you up for disappointment, and it might steer you away from certain shows that might turn out better than you would have expected, considering the staff and everything. So I kind of want to avoid that. That's why I usually don't look up who is responsible for the shows and just let myself be surprised by that person did that. Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah.
Mm.
So, yeah, however, and I just found out about this when writing the show notes because, I was looking up the staff and everything. Sadly, Dragon Pilot shares another commonality with Kisniver, and that is its writer, Mari Okada. Second red flag.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, you could say it's a red flag because she wrote Kisniver, but she's also written a lot of other great
Yeah,
stuff
sure.
too. But the problem is sometimes she's like so on point and on brand, and like Iron-Blooded Orphans, incredible, great.
First season,
Uh,
definitely. Second season,
well, yeah.
yeah.
Another one that she wrote was Nagi no Asukara, and I really really enjoyed that show, and I thought it was really good. But then when she goes off the rails, like with Black Rock Shooter,
Yeah, Lost Village was another one. Well, though to be fair, she was more responsible for the series composition in that one, I think, and only wrote the first actual episode. I'm not sure.
Mm,
But, she is a mixed bag. You mentioned Iron-Blooded Orphans. I loved the first season of that. Didn't like the second one and where it ended up. And it felt like the show, again, didn't really know where it wanted to go, or it knew where it wanted to go and where it went was shitty. Didn't, fulfill any of the promises that it made at the end of the first season and stuff like that. That's a problem. But then again, like you said, mixed bag. She also wrote good stuff. A lot of people like Toradora. A lot of people like Rosa Maiden. She just recently wrote and directed a movie called Makia, When the Promised Flower
mm.
Blooms, which is getting a lot of good reviews. So yeah, she's done a lot of good stuff. But on the other side, like we said, Black Rock Shooter, The Lost Village, Kisniver, which was a garbage fire, and now this. And had I known that she wrote this show, I would have at least approached this one much more cautiously, instead of saying, hey, girls riding dragons that transform into airplanes? That sounds like the fantasy version of Macross. I'm fucking in. And it's done by Bones, double in, which is not exactly what I said, but along those lines, right? This is why I got into this show. It's like, okay, that concept is promising. Their concept sounds cool. This might be a cool adventure show, and I love, animal characters and stuff like that. So dragons are cool. This just sounds interesting. I want to get into it. And if I heard like, hey, Mario Kart writing this, maybe I would have been like, okay, let's see if this is one of her good ones or one of her bad ones.
Hmm.
And this is both, I guess. Yeah, let's get into the nitty-gritty. The basic character constellation of Dragon Pilot is good, maybe really good. We have Hisone, who is like this, like I said, young woman who kind of distances herself from other people because she can't keep her mouth shut. She basically always says what's on her mind without giving much thought to how it will affect the person she's saying it to. But it's not like she wants to hurt people. She's a good person. It's just like, maybe to quote herself, every time I open my mouth, my thoughts pour out. So I'm doing my best to keep quiet, which she is not really good at.
So she just has no filter, basically.
Exactly. Like she mostly mumbles stuff under her breath, like, "Oh, if you're saying that, then why are you not doing that?" and shit like that. I mean, you're full of shit, blah blah blah. Basically, that's what she says. And while the person is standing next to her and she's not thinking about that, she's like, basically thinking aloud, and her thoughts are not always nice. And that makes her butt heads with her superiors and her brash fellow cadet now, who's like this hothead and, is not fond of her joining the crew in general because she was to be the destined pilot of Masotan, and now, although that wasn't working out because Masotan wouldn't accept her, but still, in the beginning, she feels like Hisone is taking that position from her, and that means she has like a shitty attitude towards her anyway. And then, Hisone is like, "Well, you were an asshole," basically telling her outright. "And you have the body of a kid, so fuck you." And
Jeez.
yeah, and she doesn't want to hurt her, but she just can't help but telling her what she thinks. So, and what she thinks is usually, the truth. So these people, a lot of what she is telling these people deserve to hear this. But it's still like, maybe put it in a more different way, or in different words, maybe would be more diplomatic. But she just can't do that. She can't control herself in that way. And this is the best brand of comedy this show has to offer, because when she does that, it's always funny, I think. At least that's the moments like that made me laugh out loud in that show. Her just just telling these people how it is and what she thinks is just entertaining, and it's funny. Like all these scenes where she's being totally unintentionally candid with the other characters in that show. I laughed my ass off because she, like I said, she usually says what the viewer is thinking, and even though she is embarrassed about it, it makes her a very endearing and relatable character. And I felt myself rooting for her very quickly because of this. Like, okay, I can relate to this person. I say, okay, she says what she's thinking, and what she is thinking is also what I'm thinking in this moment, because this is how these characters act and how I would react to that. And she does the same thing. So, yeah, she's very relatable. And these scenes where she just utters her thoughts and puts them into words immediately are just endearing, are funny and good stuff. And there's to highlight another great moment in the beginning when the role of an OTF pilot is thrusted upon her. She is like overwhelmed and keeps her mouth shut for a kind of long time because she just doesn't know how to like bow out of this situation without insulting anyone. She doesn't want to do any of this shit, but everyone is like hyper enthusiastic. "Oh my god, we finally found a pilot that Masotan accepts, that the dragon accepts, and we finally found someone who can do this job," and shit like that. And everyone's like head over heels and like, "Oh, you're gonna do this now, and this is your life now, and this and that." And she's like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! What the fuck? I just want to live a normal life. I don't want to deal with this shit." But in the beginning, she just, because that's her nature, and she doesn't want to hurt anyone, she puts it down, she keeps it quiet, she just swallows it all, and eventually, naturally, it all becomes too much, and she understandably loses her cool and just unloads on her superior, and it's a blast to watch. Like, her voice actress Misaki Kuno, who also voiced, among other things, Elf 9 in Symphogear and Hawk in Seven Deadly Sins, is doing just a really good job of embodying this like kind of innocent young woman, a bit naive, that has not really found her way in life yet and doesn't want to hurt anyone, but also doesn't want to take anyone's shit, and has like this hidden geyser of emotions that sometimes force their way. And usually, like I said, she's just mumbling under her breath, but when she goes. And it's a sight to behold. It's really good stuff. And yeah, that happens several times in the show, and it's just, she's a cool character. He's a cool character, definitely. And the other Dragon pilots who later joined the main cast are cool too. We got the very career-oriented Eru Hoshino, who butts heads with Hisone precisely because of that. Since Hisone is anything but, she's like kind of this laid-back personality who, like I said, hasn't figured really out her path through life yet, and she's like, okay, I see where this goes. And Hoshino is like this really driven person who always wanted to become a fighter pilot and is kind of not happy with the role she's put into as this dragon's pilot, because she wanted to be the first female fighter pilot. She didn't want to be a caretaker for a dragon. She just wanted to be a normal fighter pilot, and being in this role kind of pisses her off, and she's so driven to show everyone that she got the goods, like she can do all the stuff she is asked to do and can be a normal military person. And that makes her treat her dragon like shit and stuff like that, and treat some of her teammates harshly and stuff. And that's why she butts heads with Hisone and some of the others. But yeah, her story is kind of one of the most interesting ones, and her development and everything. So she's a cool character, definitely, at least in the beginning. We got Hitomi, who is this very friendly, modest, motherly character. We got Liliku, who has this weirdly old voice and sleeps a lot. I didn't look up her voice actress, but it's like this weird manner of speaking that, she sleeps a lot and has like this sleepy look on her face, but she is apparently a big fat nerd because one of her superiors blackmails her into investigating her teammates with preview pages of her favorite series from Young Jump magazine. So that's a great plot point. But yeah, those two don't get that much screen time, or maybe screen time, but not that much development. The focus, if there's focus on characters, is on Hisone and maybe Hoshino. Like these are. And now maybe, but these characters get the most screen time in terms of actual character development, which Hisone would be enough because she's the main character, definitely. So it's nice to see at least some of the other characters get a few pieces of the pie. Now, the first half of the show is basically all about Hisone and maybe Hoshino finding her place in the team. Coming to a point of self-realization, gaining more self-confidence, strengthening the bond with their dragons, which is good stuff, especially strong, very strong in Hoshino's case, because she starts at the complete opposite spectrum. Hisone is kind of reluctant towards Masotan in the beginning, scary and everything, but she very quickly gains a fondness for her dragon, and then they become best buds, and she starts her day by jumping in on his fucking nose and licking him for some reason, which is also really funny. It's almost like on a Wikipedia where she's like, it's really good and really cute. And Hoshino is really like in the beginning, she's not hating Norma, her dragon, but it's like, why do I have to do this? So her development is going from one point to another feels a bit more emotionally engaging. So having these women thrown into these weird circumstances and coming to grips with that and evolving through that, and the blossoming friendship between all the pilots and everything, all that is great. And if the series had stayed like this kind of coming of age story with a side of slice of life comedy, I would have liked it a lot, maybe loved it. I expected something more action-driven and adventure-y, given the concept, but it didn't need to be that. Neither was, for example, Girls' Last Tour, and I loved that show. So, different is fine. Sure, I don't need action in my show. Please, don't accuse me of that. I'm fine with quiet shows if they do something interesting. And in the beginning, this show did. I was like, okay, I like where this is heading. This is cool. I want to see where the story goes. I want to see where these characters goes. What's gonna be the end point? Is this just gonna stay a slice of life? Are we like following these characters through their lives and bonding with the dragons and everything, or is there gonna be happening more and stuff like that? However, in the second half, this turns into a love story.
Oh boy.
Which is already a genre not near and dear to my heart, especially in anime. But this is also a very half-baked one. Because of the short runtime, the build-up is rushed, it all feels like it's forced to serve the final act of the show, it's not organic, the writing and character interaction is incredibly high school, it's bad. In my opinion, the second half of this show is really badly written. It's not entertaining. It's half cooked. It's some of the things happen out of nowhere. Some of the things are annoying. Just the love story aspect brings all the trappings I hate about that genre with it, especially in anime, including unnecessary misunderstandings that are not funny and just annoying and pointless and are stretched out and drawn out. Well, considering this is only 12 episodes, it that's not drawn out too much, but still too long. Like, for example, oh look, the dude who was a skirt chaser and who Hoshino hated was actually a decent guy underneath, but now he must act like a douche again to push her away so that she can concentrate on flying and not lose sight of her dream. Boo-hoo, isn't that tragic? Ah! Like, ugh, I hate these scenes. I hate these fucking plot devices, these fucking cliche tried thing. Every time I see shit like that, I'm like, oh god, just tell her the truth and offer her to make that choice for herself, you fucking dipshit. It's not your place to decide that for her, even if you mean well, for fuck's sake. I hate contrived bullshit like that. Because it feels like this is all there to just conjure up unnecessary drama that doesn't really need to be there. Humans don't work like that. It always makes me feel like the show is treating its characters and its audiences like children, when at least the people in this show are supposed to be adults. And I constantly feel like, no, normal adult person would not react like this. Like, would clearly see through these people's actions and everything. Like, what is this? Come on, you don't mean that, and stuff like that. And these people are just all acting like high schoolers. Like, no, this is not how people in a normal situation who have, grown into at least some aspects of their life would react, even if they're a bit naive and innocent. No, I don't believe you. You are not believable, anime. This is a problem. If you can't make me believe your characters and how they act, then I'm not invested in the story anymore. And this happens in the second half of the story of this anime. I just have a super low tolerance when it comes to these kind of plot devices. If that doesn't bother you at all, if you're like, okay, that's fine with me, I can deal with these like soap opera romance bullshit, sure, fine, then maybe you will love this show. But if you have like a short fuse when it comes to these things like I have, and I'm probably in the minority here, I don't know, then this second half will drive you insane in certain parts. Trust me, because it did for me. But yeah, shows like moments in shows like this make me yearn for Ancient Magus Bride or maybe Wotakoi or MMO Junkie that apparently were written by people who were in an actual relationship before and are not stuck on the teen romance novel concept of how people behave. Anyway, as you can see, this grinds my gears, which is why I usually stay away from shows that delve into that territory. But since I didn't know Dragon Pilot would go there, I wasn't able to eject early enough.
Eject.
Mm-hmm.
Cute.
Yes. There are some other things that bother me about the show, which like stretch throughout in its entire runtime. I'm sorry I have to stay so negative here, but I sent the positive things in advance, so now we're stuck with the swampy stuff. In general, the way the show treats its female cast members at certain points when compared to the male cast kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like, the normal pilots, for example, are all macho dick faces, and the show acts like, oh, this is normal, this is okay, this is how it is, can't do anything about it, it's fine. Like, the series plays there's like this guy who designs the outfits for the women, and he's like this standard pervy guy who talks about female bodies a lot and is like, I just want to touch your body. All I can think about is your body. And haha, he doesn't mean it like that. He's just talking about the clothes and everything. Isn't that funny? And, the show also played the sexist pilots for laughs and everything, but it's not funny. First of all, these are all character stereotypes and old, comedy stereotypes that don't work for me anymore. But especially, if they're only in there for laughs and nothing else, then it doesn't work. You got plenty of scenes where it's like, haha, look how embarrassed she is, but these are just some goofballs, so she shouldn't, take their sexist remarks or their actions or anything seriously, because that's just how they are. Womp womp. And that's kind of a shitty message. Like, it just feels bad watching these scenes and feel like, haha, okay, why? Oh my god, look how over the top the women react, when all the men do is play around. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny how they overreact? Blah blah blah. No, it's not. Like the douchebag tries to hit on Hoshino, who's this uptight girl, and she doesn't care for it. And then he says, "Okay, the next thing I'm gonna do is break her spirit." Like he literally says that.
Uh, hmm.
Again, it's played for laughs. His buddy calls him amazing in more ways than one, but he's just an asshole. He says, literally, I'm quoting here, "Once I tear her pride to shreds, it's open season to her heart." Like, what the fuck? It's like, holy shit! Like, Mario Okada, you wrote this? Like, okay, I don't know if this is your opinion on men, or maybe it is, and that would be okay. But the show treats the guy like he's not an asshole. Like, oh, this is funny that he's saying that. Like, if he was treated like an asshole constantly, he was like, okay, he's a shitty person, and he's gonna get some comeuppance for this. He doesn't. He really doesn't.
Maybe this is me reaching, but maybe that's the point.
I guess, yeah, that's the question here. And I mean, at this point in the story, Hoshino is kind of a dick as well and treats her dragon like crap, but that doesn't justify the dude's attitude. Another example, a lot of jokes are made at the expense of a female flight officer who let her, in quotes, man get stolen by another woman, which, of course, according to the man, must be the main cause of her frustration in certain parts. Again, played for laughs. And it's like, it paints this picture of women in the military, in the profession, where it's like, oh man, they would fit in if they only, had control of their emotions and found themselves a nice man and everything. It's like, what? There is no scene where you can immediately put your finger on it and point like, okay, the show is definitely going like in a very bad place here. But there's so many scenes where it's like lingering in and glancing in from the background, and you're like, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't sound good. Where's the show going with this? I mean, if it was just putting that out there and saying, okay, this is shitty behavior, address the unfairness women face in the military, which is, it kind of does with Hoshino's story, because she's saying at one point, and this is the cause of her frustration, I had to work doubly hard for everything. Nobody is taking me seriously, and now I have to take care of this dragon. This is unfair. I just want to be a fight inspired. Nobody is giving me the light of day. Nobody is really helping me out and everything. This is a man's place. And if it would have done that and stayed more like that and highlighted that, I was like, okay, this is great. This is like, okay, yeah, highlight that, show that. This is important. This is real world stuff. This is probably how a lot of women feel in the military right now, all over the world, right? But then the unfairness, the way the women are treated in an unfair way, and get joked at, get treated in a sexist bad way, is played for laughs, and the men, and the people that play the jokes on them are not displayed necessarily as the bad guys here. That doesn't feel like the show is making the right point here. Am I wrong? I don't think so.
Doesn't feel like it's making any point at all in that regard, the way you're describing it.
No, if it didn't make any point at all, if it just puts the facts out there, I don't know, then it wouldn't have been so problematic, but it feels at certain point like it's taking the bad guy's side. Maybe I'm imagining things. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, which is very possible, but that is the feeling I got while watching this show, and it didn't sit right with me. It left me really like grinding my teeth and like, I don't like what you're saying, show. I really don't. To summarize, it displays stuff that's probably happening in the military as real behavior right now. Women getting treated unfairly, getting mobbed, whatever. At least military where both genders are allowed to serve. But the show doesn't always frame it like a bad thing that the women are treated this way, which just left a really bad aftertaste in my mouth. And I wonder if that was intentional, if there was a point to be made here, but it felt like the show was just taking the wrong side here and playing it for laughs when it shouldn't have to, because it was trying to stay on the comedy route. And yeah, I don't know if I'm reading too much into it. If people watch the show and feel completely different, please get back to me. Please tell me if I'm Especially, I would like if we have any female listeners, please tell me if you've watched the show and felt like, hey, no, I think the show made a very good point about how women are treated in the military and everything, and didn't take the man's side. But yeah, I just didn't feel good watching this. It didn't feel right. Another weird thing is we get like these weirdly sexual previews after the credits. The usual, oh, this is on the next episode. It's not visual wise, but it's always these script snippets from the next episode that are edited in a way that makes them sound super lewd and doesn't match the episode at all. Like, it's really weird. I don't know how to describe it, but it feels like, oh, this is the characters about to fuck or something, and that's not what's happening in the next episode, obviously, but the text, like the script choices and snippets they put in the preview make it sound like it.
Hey, got to clickbait you to make sure you watch the next episode.
Yeah, but fool me once. Maybe I believed it for one episode, but then the next episode was like, okay, why are you doing this? I mean, of course, I know why they're doing this. It's for comedy's sake. But again, it doesn't fit the coming episode, and it's not really that funny. Like, it's okay, they're using snippets to make it sound sexual, but okay, haha, all right. It's just I felt the tone of the show was just all over the place in certain parts, and that was a feeling I had constantly. Not as much in the first half, especially in the second half. It got stronger and stronger. Some other negative tidbits here and there. Some of the later character development is also half-baked. Like, there's this moment in the last episode, or second to last, where Hisone is at a difficult point in her arc and has to come to a realization and has to do some self-reflection and everything. And is only given like half an episode for that, to basically recognize that she has made a mistake and everything. I mean, I guess I should be thankful that she got at least that, but it still feels super rushed. It feels like, okay, this should have gotten like one episode or something. And it feels like, okay, she's there at this one point, and the next scene she has already turned herself around and is rushing towards her new goal and whatever. It's like, what? I feel like I'm missing part of the of the character development here. What happened? There was like a 180 degrees turn out of nowhere, kinda. So, I mean, it's still justified in a way, like plot-wise, but still, it feels like, okay, this needed a bit more time to simmer to have any kind of impact. And yeah, so again, feels half-baked, which I can say about a lot of aspects in this show. I'd rather have seen more episodes spent on the D-pilots besides Hoshino and Hisone. Like, give me something about Liliko, give me something about Hitomi. We barely know anything about them and their backstories and everything. And instead, they like focus on this weird dual love story in the end and what that means for piloting the dragons, because that has an effect on them as well, and it's problematic and blah blah blah. So characters react to that in a different way and draw their different conclusions from that. Naturally the wrong conclusions first, because that's how these stories go, and then they have to change that up, and then the plot moves forward to the point where it was going to, like I said, the secret destiny, blah blah blah. And then we get like this random super dark plot twist in the final episode that, again, in no way fits the rest of the show up to this point in terms of tone. And yeah, that has to be resolved in a way. And that's what the story has been leading up to. And I don't know, they try to build some bridges in terms of how other characters acted in the story and what it means for the conclusion of the story and everything. But it doesn't work. It just doesn't connect. It's hard to go into details without spoiling a lot of this stuff. So I have to talk around it a bit, but it just feels like a lot of the stuff that they were trying to make work together, let the gears fit together and work towards a common story goal, just didn't connect. And yeah, it shows. I felt like this in the end the entire time. None of this really connects. None of this like leads to the impact this needs to have. It feels like the show at least either needed more episodes, or needed to focus on different characters, or needed different characters to interact with each other. None of this really matches the tone or works together in conjunction. So yeah, it's just, I felt like the show fell flat on its ass at the end, and it didn't work for me. It did not connect. I couldn't be engaged anymore. And stray observation here. Speaking of dark twists, here's one that didn't happen. I didn't expect it to happen, but I kind of wanted them to address it. Like I said in the beginning, the dragons have been part of this universe throughout times and have always, disguised as the flying vehicle du jour, be it like kites, however that might have worked. Then later airplanes and everything. And that makes you think, what did they do in World War II? Like, what was the role of the dragons in World War II? I'm interested to know what did they do with them? Did they use them in the war? Like, did they completely skip out on that? Did they fucking use them in kamikaze attacks? Were dragons killed? Like this is like this weird gap in the lore that the show is setting up, which, like I said, I didn't expect them to address because Japan is kind of hesitant when it comes to working through these kind of story points. But still, in a story that focuses on the military and on dragons and on fighter planes, you would expect that is at least kind of addressed like as a aside, and it really isn't. So, I don't know what happened in World War II with the dragons. I don't know what happened with the fighter planes. I guess they didn't kill all of them because, they're still around. But yeah, I don't know. The show doesn't talk about it. So that was kind of weird. I mean, again, that wouldn't have fit the rest of the tone, at least of the first half, because, it would have been too dark, probably. But then again, the show gets kind of dark in the end, and yeah. I don't know. So, it's such a weird mixed bag, and I can't recommend this show. I really can't. I mean, despite my misgivings about like the second half, the last third, the ending is kind of sweet, albeit a bit rushed again. At least all the annoying stuff is resolved. Not all in the way that I hoped for, but it is resolved. It's not like left dangling in the air, which anime also like to do a lot, especially when it comes to relationship stuff. There is some commitment there. There's some resolution. So I should be thankful for that, I guess. But it still feels like the show wasted my time by bringing this into the mix at all in the first place, instead of focusing on other things. Because, like I said, it doesn't really connect with the rest of the story. It doesn't really work. It feels haphazardly introduced. It feels rushed and not well written. Yeah. So, few bright spots aside, there was just not enough for me in that series to really engage with. I liked the first half, didn't like the second half. Overall, it's a really mixed bag. And if you combine those two halves, I guess you get something decent. Maybe, I don't know. If the show had started badly and ended on a really good note, like evolved to something much better through its runtime, maybe I would have gotten away from it more positively, or I wouldn't have stayed with it at all. Because after 3 episodes, if a show hasn't gripped me by that point, I usually give it the boot. But usually, if a show starts shitty and ends on a high note, I don't know how you handle that, but for me, that usually lets me leave the show on a more positive note when it comes to my overall opinion on it. Except when it's the other way around, like it is here.
Yeah, I mean, I like to see a show turn itself around, but I also don't like to have a show waste my time. So
Yeah.
if it doesn't get to the point, or it's, what it's trying to do in a decent amount of time, I just kind of like kick it.
Yeah. Yeah, probably the same for me. So I don't know what... I mean, I told you what they could have done to turn the show around, focus on different things, more solid writing in the specific parts, kick out all the weird stuff that didn't work for me. But I don't know if they could have done that without losing what they wanted to do with this show. But I don't know what they wanted to do with the show, honestly. I have no idea. I just know I felt disappointed coming away from this. and that's a shame because it had a lot of potential, and for me it just couldn't live up to that promising setup. So yeah, it will be on Netflix soon. Maybe check it out if you are not as thin-skinned when it comes to badly written romance plots as I am. But if you are looking for something that is engaging all the way through, in my opinion, you should stay away from this one.
So from there, we make the jump talking about weird stories about dragons and awkward, not quite romances to video games. Yay, video games. So what could we be talking about other than Sword Art Online?
And thus the mood sinks again.
It's Sword Art has at this point become a case of I have to know.
Okay. Yeah.
And you know what's great is we got Alicization coming up next season, and it's set to run a full year. Pray for my soul. But more to the point, this is a segment about Sword Art Online alternative Gale Online. So what is it about? Well, it's about a girl named Karen. I'm going to butcher her name again. I did it last time, too. Karen Kohiruimaki. Nailed it. She's a college girl. Yeah, thank you. She's a college girl, and she is very insecure about her height. She's like 6 feet tall, which I brought this up when we first talked about this show, but I knew a girl in high school who was also very tall and very conscious about that. So I have witnessed this parallel for myself in real life. So yeah, she's very tall, very self-conscious about it, and she's, bad at dealing with people in the real world. Aren't we all?
I would say, the tall thing would even be more of a thing in Japan because, people are generally smaller over there. So
yeah,
maybe I don't know. Talking out of my ass, of course, but I would expect women, if they want to conform to a norm there, would be, more the smaller type. And if someone like completely breaks from that norm, they would be, I don't know how they would be treated. Would they be treated like a freak show, or would they be, oh my God, this is such an exotic beauty? I don't know.
I feel like it could probably cut both ways, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, looking it up, a quick Google search just now returns that like the average male height is about 5'7.5", and the average female height is about 5'2.5". But those are also averages, and averages don't mean shit. Let's be real.
True. Yeah.
So she decides, what better way to get away from my anxiety in the real life than video games. Yeah. So she at the recommendation of her friend Mayu ends up trying, or Miyu, excuse me, I'm sorry. Miyu tries out this whole VR online game thing, and I didn't realize, I don't remember if this was established quite as heavily in the other Sword Art series, but apparently in a lot of the VR games in this world, your avatar is like pretty much randomly generated.
Okay.
So she keeps hopping from one game to another because it keeps giving her like these, super tall characters, and she's like, this isn't what I want to be. I don't want to be like real life. And let's be real, when you want to play a video game, don't you want to escape? So she finally comes upon the game Gale Online, which may be familiar if you watched SAO 2.
Definitely. I mean, it's probably, just to be fair, that's probably my favorite part about SAO, just, the Gale chapter. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean,
it's not saying a lot, but if I remember correctly, you were also pretty fond of Mother's Rosario, so.
Yeah, well, I formed an unexpected personal connection to that, so.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like my tolerance for Sword Art as a whole has gone up since I will not make any excuses for the first series. It's bad. It's really bad. But as time has gone on, like Gun Gale was fine. I enjoyed Mother's Rosary. The movie was all right. It was what it was. So I guess we'll see what Alicization brings this fall. But
Oh yeah, will we ever?
more to the point, Karen creates her avatar Len, who is like the squat little 5 foot nothing character, running around in fatigues in a P90, and she decides to make her fatigues all bright pink because that's how you do military stuff. You stand out as much as you can, but whatever. It's an online game. She meets this mysterious female player who goes by the name Pito Hui, and they hit it off. But one day, Pito Hui pressures Karen into participating in Squad Jam, a team battle royale variation of the Bullet of Bullets tournament, which we sort of saw in SAO2 as well. Mm-hmm. So this series sort of sets its connections to SAO2 very, very firmly from the onset, and actually as it goes throughout, because there are conversations between Karen and Miyu where they're talking about, oh, this thing is happening, or oh, during the first Bullet of Bullets, these two players work together until the very end, and it sort of rings that little bell in your head. I know what they're talking about. I know the thing. And there's even a moment later on where Miyu says to Karen, yeah, there's this one player in ALO calls herself Zekken, and she's like one of the best there is. And it's like, yay, they're talking about, one of my favorite characters, Yuki. So the timeline where this takes place in relation to the other stories is pretty firmly set. So there's no real questions about, oh man, how does this fit into the cinematic universe, as it were. So it feels pretty organic too, which is probably my big thing about it. But yeah, I will say I enjoyed this show mostly because mostly because the original novels were written by Keiichi Sikasawa, who we've talked about before during Kino's journey. Because he's the one who penned that story. Apparently, this was also under the watchful eye of ye old Reki Kawahara, but
he probably had only some, superficial input for that.
Yes, I imagine that's the case. Mostly because this story captures the essence of playing a game for personal enjoyment and escape. Whereas the original SAO is, I'm a cool guy, and it's like, okay. I mean, there's parts of your story I like, Kawahara, but I just don't like Kirito. I never have, and I probably never will. I don't know what your personal takeaway on him is.
Well, he's one of those cardboard coons.
Yeah.
He's the self-insert character, like the self-insertiest character out there. He has only like this facade of a personality that is only put in there to make his voice actor have a job. And aside from that, you could just slap any fucking anime hero face ever on him, or game hero, whatever, that you basically fill out as a character. Because aside from that, he's only, I'm the strongest, maybe I'm brooding today, but yeah, I'm the super strong guy, and I will be your power fantasy, and that's it. So he's just boring, that's all. Kirito is a fucking boring character.
Why wasn't Klein the main character, man?
Yeah, I wonder. But yeah, that was my takeaway. It's like, Kirito, you suck. And yeah, that's it.
He was... Sword Art is so perplexing to me because I like the character designs. I like the idea of a VR MMO. I like the music, the set designs. Yeah, I love the action choreography, the animation.
Best work, probably.
Yeah, and then you get to Kirito, and it's like, I don't I don't care. I care about everyone around. Maybe with the exception of Asuna, because she got fucking Casca'd real hard in the second season. But
Mm.
everyone else around him is like, I want to know more about them. I don't give a flying fuck about you.
Yeah.
So when we get to this series with a different cast of characters, oh, I like Karen a lot because she's very easy to identify with. She's socially awkward. She's anxious. She just wants to play some fucking video games, man. You know?
So how do they like I don't know, do they emphasize the power fantasy in this one as well? Like don't you want to be that character, or is she enough of a character of her own to first of all not make you insert yourself into that character, and second to give you some semblance of character development and I don't know, agency that was not there for Kirito in the first series.
I mean, I'll be honest. I feel like there's a little bit of both,
Okay.
but it doesn't hit on the self-insert button as hard as
Oh,
Kirito
okay.
does.
All right.
Because, uh, it's a little weird at the start of the series. I think it's meant to be understood, what I took away from it, that it's sort of a flash forward that Karen has, learned how to play the game, and you see her doing mildly well.
Mm.
Because when they flash back some episodes later, she's, very, oh geez, how do I do the thing? I don't know. But she makes a name for herself in GGO as the Pink Devil later on.
Yeah, that matches what I've seen of her artwork. So
But you feel like you want her to win,
mm.
whereas opposed to Kirito, it's like, oh, you know he's gonna win, so
Okay.
who cares?
So it's not necessarily a given for that show. Like she is not good in everything, I guess.
Right, because the she fights alongside one of Pitahui's friends, who calls himself
Mm.
just M.
Mm.
All right,
Hmm.
in the first squad jam,
Mhm.
and he and they, this is, I don't think this is really spoiler since it happens pretty early on, but they sort of end up pulling out a really crazy win. M is, super tactical and whatnot, and we find out a bit later on that it's mostly a facade
Mhm.
because he comes across as super serious, like, whoa, we need to capture this point. I have this deployable armor that's harder than a tank's. Oh, okay, sure you do. And his facade sort of starts to melt away, and we see what the character's all about. And he's and then, which sort of starts to happen in the second squad GM. He becomes a bit more interesting. So it takes a little bit of time for you to get, I feel like, yet more invested with the cast, since this is also a short run time for a show. It's only, I think it was 12, 13 episodes. But I feel like there's something to like, a little bit of something to like about everyone. I mean, I'm not gonna mince words, but when we get to the end of the second squad jam, Pito Hui's personal motivations are odd, to say the least. And I'll leave it at that for people
Okay.
who want to watch the show.
So there's a bit of mystery sprinkled in there in between.
Yeah.
Okay. Or, at least a bit of anticipation to what is this leading up to and what is that character about.
Yeah. And I mean, even though it is, I still think the writing around that is a little strange,
Mm.
but the character moment it leads to is nice.
Cool.
So it's got that going.
So
The,
sorry, is the tone of the show all like fun and games, or is it without spoiling anything, is it getting I don't know, a bit more serious, a bit more drama-y in the later parts, or is this just okay, this is a fun, good time?
I mean, it starts off as, yeah, video games, but then later on it gets a bit I don't know if I'd
Also
say
live.
I don't know if I'd say unnecessarily dramatic, but it does have a strange moment later on that again it's hard to describe
Okay.
without delving too deep into spoiler territory.
All right.
I will say though that the show had fun with its concept because they're talking about the origins of Squad Jam and are saying, hey, so I guess Bullet of Bullets was a big thing, but what brought in on the idea of Squad Jam? Oh, there was some author was in his 50s or something who's a bit of a gun freak and he threw money at the company to say, "Hey, I'll sponsor this battle royale like squad tournament." And it's Sigsawa himself. He threw himself into the story and he voiced himself in the show. And it's just in such this wonderfully self-aware, just silly manner that it doesn't really undercut itself. And I was like, you know what? That's pretty good. That is some life goals right there.
That's the
And
kind of self-insert I can get behind.
yeah, I really appreciated that. He was in there for maybe two scenes in one episode. So it was fine. I just couldn't help but laugh it off. So it was a lot of fun, and I'm glad that and he kind of exaggerated his own age a bit, which I thought was funny. Because he's closer to
I'm an old fart.
he's closer to his like early mid 40s than his 50s.
Okay.
But yeah, it was kind of fun because you look in the credit roll for that episode, and he's credited as I forget exactly what it is, but it's something like author who's overly obsessed with guns. Oh
Is
man,
his real name Sigisawa or is that a pen name? Because that sounds awfully like Sig Sauer. I wonder.
I mean, his name is always written as Keiichi Sigsawa, so I don't think it's a pen name.
Yeah, I wonder. Still, it's like it would be a nice coincidence.
I mean, I guess it's written as Sigsawa, but it's pronounced Shigusawa, so whatever. It's
I
essentially
have
the
my
same name.
suspicions.
But yeah, this show, I'm sort of glad that someone else is taking a stab at sword art and making it fun for what it is. Also, interesting thing, this show was not animated by A1. It was animated by 3 Hertz, who we've talked about.
Right. I almost forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about them before during Dimension W, Flip Flappers, and Princess Principal. And this show looks decently good for what it is. I mean,
So on the level of Princess Principal.
yeah, I mean, obviously, every show's going to have animation shortcuts, but
Sure.
I don't feel like this show had any like glaring like moments to it. It looked pretty consistent throughout. So it was interesting to have a different writing crew, a different animation crew. So speaking of, this show was directed by Masayuki Sakoi, who's worked on stuff like Matoi, The Sacred Slayer, Code Breaker, Flip Flappers, Hero Man, Spice and Wolf, the Madhouse Wolverine show.
Mm-hmm.
I
never finished that.
I was about to ask because you're more on that sort of stuff than I am. If you
I started
hadn't
it, but I only watched like 3 episodes. It was fine, but it was just like, all these anime Marvel shows were not really super great. I think I heard the best things about the X-Men show, but I didn't check that one out. What else did we get? Iron Man was bad. It looked bad.
I forgot there was an Iron Man.
Oh yeah, that was like promised. All these were done by Madhouse, and the first teaser they showed for the Iron Man thing was amazing because I think that was done by forgot its name, the same guy who was responsible for Ninja Scroll and Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. But yeah, I think that was done by him, and that looked great because it was all hand animated and traditionally animated and looked good. And then in the actual TV show, we got a bad CG Iron Man. Oof. Yeah, and Wolverine looked alright, but the story wasn't really there, and X-Men didn't check out, and Blade neither. So I don't know how the other ones fared, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the big Marvel anime that always springs to mind when it's mentioned, my brain goes to Avengers Disc Wars,
Oh God.
but I know nothing about it other than it exists and is
There's
a
another
thing.
one. There's another one with the Avengers in it. I don't know if Avengers Next Generation or something, where like three kids get like drafted into the Avengers. Like three kids from Japan, I think. And that also looks fun, but it looks all very kids show. So I haven't checked it out. Also, I think that's not easy to get to, even in fan sub territory. So, but if you
Uh,
want to see a good Marvel thing animated by a Japanese studio, check out Hulk versus, which is has like these two little short are like these short OVAs, like I think 45 minutes for each. One Hulk versus Wolverine, one Hulk versus Thor. And at least the first one, I don't know about the second one, Hulk versus Thor, but Hulk versus Wolverine is animated by Madhouse again, but really well. Like this is a really good looking OVA, and it's got Wolverine in there, it got Deadpool in there, Omega Red. I don't know who else is in there, but really fun cast, really entertaining, really good looking action. So if you ever, I think it's on Netflix, I think it's on Amazon, at least you're over here it is. I don't know how it is in the States, but yeah, it's good stuff. So yeah,
it's cool.
that's as a weird tangent. Well, yeah, let's continue with Gun Gale.
Yeah, and the show was penned by Yosuke Kuroda. Who I'm pretty certain we've talked about before, as he has a large body of work, including, but not limited to, Drifters, Excel Saga, Gundam Build Fighters, Hayate the Combat Butler,
That's a blast from the past.
yeah, High School of the Dead, Gundam 00, Iron Blooded Orphans he worked a bit on, My Hero Academia he's worked on,
Mm-hmm.
a whole bunch of Tenchi and Trigun.
Mm-hmm.
So he has been around the block, and I think,
Not too shabby of a track record there.
no kidding. So I think him and Sigsawa coming together were probably the main reasons why most of the writing in this show felt pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, again, coming from a guy who will probably mostly steer you away from sword art, but I feel like, I honestly feel like this show is worth watching for what it is, because, it just feels so much more natural and not, ham-fisted compared to pretty much everything else.
So you mentioned the aspect of her having issues with being so big and thus turning the games where she can be her wish character and everything. Does that get addressed more? Like, does she learn to cope with that in the real world through her gaming habits? Is that like a plot point that gets addressed?
Actually, honestly, not at length,
Okay.
but I sort of feel like maybe the whole height thing doesn't really come up super often, but she does honestly come across as being a bit more comfortable with herself later on. So, it's sort of a slow growth, as it were.
Okay. Well, that's something. And one last question: that when I watched the first episode, I have to say, I mean, it was tired in that evening, but I fell asleep. Not necessarily the show's fault, but I felt like in the beginning the team shooting was a bit too. Sounds weird, but a bit too realistic for me because it feels like okay, this is about people discussing the tactics and everything, and how realistic does the show stay? Does it get more ridiculous? Does it, stay on like a route where it's okay? These are kind of realistic tactics, and it's going into the planning and everything, or does it get super anime by the end so that people who are more into the crazy bullshit would still be engaged in the action?
I kind of feel like it's a little bit of a mix, but I feel like it's sort of weighs a bit more heavily on, the anime side. But, it's considering, in the first Squad Jam, Len and M take down a group of people who are basically using the game as a training exercise in their actual military kind of strikes me as being a bit, I kind of feel like they would probably have better squad tactics than someone who's a relative newbie and an RPer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a good time with it. The action was good. It made you feel invested in, these different teams on the in the battle royale. Which team's going to come out on top, and the when Miyu joins Karen in GGO, she also has like this squat little 5 foot nothing avatar wielding 2 fucking grenade launchers. So you got one girl with this shining pink P90 and another girl with just explosives at the ready constantly, and it seems goofy, and it is goofy.
Sounds a bit like Gunsmith Cats.
A little bit. But it's fun, and I enjoyed it, and I do think SAO Alternative is worth watching for what it is.
So, after the disappointed and probably disappointing rant that was my review of Dragon Pilot, I feel like I should end the show on a truly positive note. I mean, John already brought us back on track with his review of Gun Gale, because that was much more positive. But I wanna contribute to the positive tone, and boy, I can think of no better way to do that besides buying ice cream for all our listeners than to talk about Yowamushi Pedal, one of my favorite sports anime in recent years. I know I throw that phrase around a lot, but that is no coincidence or artificial positivity, because the recent years have just been very kind to sports anime fans, in my opinion. Kuroko's Basketball was excellent. Haikyuu is ridiculously good. The new Captain Tsubasa show is amazing. And I'm happy to say that Yowamushi Pedal can firmly place itself among the ranks of those other three, because I love it. So let's talk about why and what the show is in general. By the way, since I'm not at home for this recording and was busy with a lot of other stuff, I did not manage to probably write up my show notes for this one. So I'll have to wing it a bit, and the review might be more of a patchwork of observations about the show and reasons why I love it, instead of, working along a structured path. So apologies in advance for that. But I think I'm passionate enough about this series to bring my point across, even if I'll skip some of the finer details, but we'll see. So, Yowamushi Pedal is about a young, cheerful boy named Sakamichi Onoda who just enrolled at Sohoku High School. He's a giant nerd. Like, Jesus. Beyond our level, even, I think. Which, of course, means he is not interested in any of the usual high school sports clubs. His biggest dream is to join the anime club, to talk about his favorite hobby with a lot of new friends. His favorite series being Love Hime. A show he sings the OP of whenever he can, which basically consists of Hime, 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 Hime. It's ridiculous. But yeah, that includes his weekly 90-kilometer trip to Akihabara, which is a long distance.
90? Jesus.
90, yeah. And now he has been doing that long-ass trip every week since his youngest childhood days on his giant-ass heavy mummy bike. So it's no surprise that he's able to climb the enormous slope to his school without a problem. However, that catches the eye of Shunsuke Imaizumi, who is also a first year enrolling at the same school as Onoda, and who intends to join the bicycle road racing club of Sohoku. And after seeing Onoda climb the hill, he challenges him to a race. Onoda is at first very reluctant, because he's not interested in sports and considers himself not an athletic person. However, Imaizumi baits him by promising Onoda to join the anime club, which has been shut down just before Onoda joined the school, which gave him much grief. So now Onoda has plenty of motivation because he believes he can get, if he gets someone, can get someone like Imaizumi to join the club, his dream of an anime club will be realized once again. And of course, the race also attracts the other members of the bicycle racing club because Onoda rides on his fucking old ass heavy bike. And of course, one thing leads to another. Onoda really enjoys racing Imaizumi, and eventually, after some back and forth, joins the bicycle racing club. Quickly forms a strong friendship with his new teammates and develops an unknown passion for the world of bicycle racing, which is very important because there are a lot of long and difficult races before him and his teammates, and a lot of strong and really weird opponents. Yeah, that is the simple setup for Yowamushi Pedal, as sports anime as they can get. Aside from the main character maybe being a bit unusual, which is also a good thing. The animation production for this show is done by TMS. Recently, we talked about them in my review of Megalobox. They're also known for Detective Conan, Lupin III, Anpanman, and a lot of stellar work on American cartoons in the 90s. And Yowamushi Pedal is a good-looking show. It's very colorful. The designs take some time getting used to. You get some weird angular faces and truly ginormous eyes. But aside from that, it's colorful. It's nice to look at. The animation is rather fluid. Some shortcuts here and there. It's based on a manga that started in 2008 and has at this point 57 volumes and is still running.
Wow.
The first anime season ran in 2013 for 38 episodes. Then we got the second season, Yowamushi Pedal Grand Road, in 2014 with 24 episodes. The third season, Yowamushi Pedal New Generation, in 2017 with 25 episodes. And now the fourth season, Yowamushi Pedal Glory Line, this year with 25 episodes as well.
I honestly didn't realize it had been running that long.
Yes, it's a long-ass series at this point, and it got several movies, OVAs, games, a spin-off manga. It's a successful franchise. And it's still going. It's not over. In fact, like the most current season ends on a cliffhanger in the middle of a race. So there you go. There's lots more to come. The entire current season was one long race, and it's not over yet. So you know what's in front of you, what's coming for you when you start watching that show. The races in the show are really long, and maybe for some people that will be a problem, but not for me because there's enough interesting stuff happening. But I get into that. They use CG in a very interesting way in the show, which is mostly only on the legs of the characters and sometimes the torso and arms during the races. And only during the races. And then they switch to traditional animation for close-ups, which probably saves money and is barely noticeable, which is a good thing. In fact, it makes for some very fluid pedaling animation routines. In my opinion, this is a very good way to use CG in anime, which I don't get to say often. But yeah, the faces always stay traditional animation, and since there is no big movement on the arms and legs for the bicycle riding animation, when they're just pedaling and not, doing like crazy stunts or anything, that's when they switch to traditional animation. But when they're just pedaling and talking, you can see from the shading and everything that the arms and legs and torso is CG. But since the animation itself is so small and so limited, it doesn't feel alien and doesn't feel stiff or weirdly choppy, which you often get with CG in anime. So this is a very good way to use CG and make things easy for long extended scenes where you have like the same animation cycle, but it is never like intrusive or weirdly unfitting for the rest of the animation. So I think whoever decided to do it this way for this show made a really good choice. Really good stuff here in terms of how they combine CG animation with traditional animation. The show is directed by Osamu Nabeshima, who also directed Z-Man, a show I've watched, which was alright. Saint Seiya Lost Canvas and Hamtaro. That's also a blast from the past, among other things. Like I said, you get the feeling in certain parts that the show drags a bit. Maybe because, the races, like I said, are super long. And I think the best example for that in the first season, right after they have like this welcoming race for Onoda where they gauge his full abilities and everything, they go to training camp, which is a common shonen trope, and that goes a bit too long. Like there are some characters introduced in there that get much more important in the third and fourth season. But at that point in the show, it feels like, okay, we're dragging this out too much. This part of the show, this arc could be a lot shorter because we know this is all leading up to this big race, this inter-high, where all these different high schools in the region compete, which is the big thing that we've been waiting for. And this feels like a small precursor to that has way too much of a build up, and that is like really the only point in the show where I felt that it took its sweet time, like too much of its sweet time. But aside from that, even though the races are so super long, there are so many things happening in those races that like time flies by for me. And a lot of the reason for that are all the colorful characters in this show. The cast of Yowamushi Pedal is fucking amazing. There are wide varieties of sports anime. You got the more realistic stuff, for example, Slam Dunk, or for example, Haikyuu. And you got the stuff that's more out there, like Kuroko's Basketball and Tsubasa, maybe. And then you got Yowamushi Pedal, which is, holy shit, as crazy as it can get in certain parts. And this very much relates to the characters themselves, and who are like these really broad, cartoony, often very loud and funny characters. But it also relates to how the races themselves are presented, which again, super dramatic, over the top. All the characters have like these weird superhero quirks, like special abilities, weird riding styles, special moves. For example, special moves. One of the characters is able to like suck in this huge amount of air, which gives him like this long-lasting endurance where he can go fast for a very long time because he has so much air in his lungs, which is ridiculous because he like inhales like 20 lungs worth of air. And then there's this character who can gain all the information about the other characters by just touching their muscles. And you have weird quirks for some of the characters. Like one of them, Izumida, names his muscles, his pecs, Andy and Frank, and talks to them during the race.
What?
And that's how he like psychs himself up. Like, Andy, Frank, I can hear what you want from me. I know what to do. And it's amazing. It's amazing. Of course, the show doesn't take itself seriously all the time, only when it needs to heighten the drama. But it's always in good fun. It's always entertaining. And the same character I mentioned before, Izumida, he also says, when he gets really into it, he says abs all the time, which in Japanese is then abu, abu, abu. And he says this like, all the fucking time while he's riding his bike like a maniac. And it's fantastic. And oh, there's so many moments in that show that make me laugh out loud because the characters are so outrageous, so funny, but also so sympathetic. Like, there's so many sympathetic characters in this that I'm willing to root for, even on the opposing teams. Like I said, Izumida is not part of the Sogo team. He's part of Hakone, who is like this big rival team. But he's so funny because he's like crazy. And, you got a character who sprouts wings from his back because, of course, they're not real wings. He can just read the wind very well and use the wind in his favor, and that's why people say he has wings. And because this is anime, actual wings materialize on his back. That's how it goes. Yeah, this is just the craziest of crazy sports anime, and oh god, I love it. I love it so much. This is what I watch sports anime for. This is the ridiculous bullshit I want to see. I mentioned in my review of Megalobox that the boxing in that was like, aside from the animation not being good, was just too slow and sluggish and weirdly realistic, and that's not the stuff I look for in sports anime. Now, Yowamushi Pedal is exactly what I look for in sports anime. This is exactly the kind of stupid shit I want to see. That gets me riled up, that gets me jump up from my couch and just fist bump in the air. And like, yeah, go for it, guys. This is amazing. This is a kind of crazy bullshit. Go for it. Like I said, we have good main characters. Like Onoda is super, like, a giant nerd, super relatable. But he's also just a really good guy. Once he gets into this team, like I said, he's reluctant at first because, not necessarily because he's like, oh, I hate this, but he's like, I'm not a sports person, I can't do this. But then when he realizes how fun it is to take part in this and be with his teammates and just ride with them their bicycles and do these activities together, he just gets really into it. And it's just, man, he is an endless spring of positivity and go for it. And every time he's down, he just motivates himself by singing that fucking Love Hime song and ropes other characters into it who are not really that kind of character, which makes it all the more amazing. Like there's one specific scene in one of the first races where one of his teammates is like struck down by a mass accident. And Onona stops or goes to the back and picks him up, and those two catch up to the other team members and motivate each other by singing that fucking song. And it's one of the most magical scenes I've ever seen in anime, ever. It's so ridiculous, it's hilarious, but it's also so heartfelt and just great and lovable. And man, I loved it. It's fantastic. And there's so many scenes throughout that show. But, you know, this is about a competition, so we also need good opponents. And since it's a shonen anime, we have to call them villains, because this is what this is. This is fighting on your fucking bicycles. And this show also has one of the best villains in anime history, in my opinion, which is Akira Midosuji, who is like, I don't know how to accurately describe this person. First of all, he's creepy as fuck. He makes these weird faces all the time, sticks out his tongue and everything, contorts himself. He's like this weird fucked up mix between a shark, a chameleon, some kind of weird insect, and venom. He is great. He's one of the most like fun characters in how over the top villain he is. Like, he's so cartoony, like ridiculously cartoony. But the voice actor is having so much fun with it, and he's so good at being an evil asshole, and it's straight out of, I don't know, you can put him on Pestle with Cell or Freeze or anything, I don't know. He's fucking out there, he's ridiculous, and he's fun, and the show is so good at making him this fucking weird creature. So good, in fact, that I dedicated my Tumblr page to him for a while. And put fucking the best GIF moments from the show on there, just to emphasize how fucking crazy that character is. Like, there's a scene where he contorts himself to basically put the majority of this body in front of his his bike to, I don't know what he's trying to do. I don't know, less wind resistance. It's dumb shit, but it looks so fucking creepy, and it's so fun because it's so dumb. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, everything in this show is over the top. The drama, the comedy, everything. It's very loud, it's very in your face, and if that is not something that you seek out in anime, then maybe that show isn't for you. But if you, like I do, like crazy dumb bullshit in your anime, I would really compare this to Food Wars a lot. I started watching Yowamushi Pedal before Food Wars, so that comparison did not immediately spring to mind, but after watching Food Wars and turn with Yowamushi Pedal, these shows really feel a lot alike. Only Yowamushi Pedal is actually more action-driven, but, you know, the fun plot points, the making the most mundane thing ridiculous aspect of it, the over-the-top drama, which, you know, in the most recent season of Food Wars got really out there. You know, all of that stuff that makes it so entertaining, all the while having great character development, which Yowamushi Pedal also has. All of that is really comparable, and I think if you like Food Wars, not only because of the food stuff, but because of the shonen aspect, it realizes very well. If you like Food Wars, you might also like Yowamushi Pedal, depending, you know. I'm not a fan of bicycle racing at all, So I was kind of like in the beginning, will the show be for me? But that doesn't matter. The show gets you into it really well. Like, you care about fucking the difference between climbers, between sprinters and all-rounders, like how the bike setup is constructed, what kind of tactics they have to use for different kinds of races. Like, all that stuff gets built up really well. And like I said, I was not into bicycle racing before this. I'm not now in the real world, but I'm in anime world now. I'm fucking hyped every time, a new stage of the race, because, oh my god, this is this kind of part of the race, so these characters should have an advantage. What's gonna happen now? Like, how are they gonna compete with that? And stuff like that. So yeah, the show is really good at doing that. And character development-wise, also really well. Nothing too deep or anything. I mean, Food Wars doesn't do that either. It does a good job at doing the basic stuff when it comes to character development. The strongest stuff being maybe the recent Irina and her father storyline. And Yowamushi Pedal, first we got the basic stuff with Onara out of the way, coming out of a shell, becoming more of a team person and everything. And then we got all the other characters that also have their own motivation, their own baggage. And the show isn't like, okay, we have done that character and now that character doesn't matter anymore. The best example I can give for that is the training arc in the first season that I mentioned before, that feels a bit dragged out in the beginning, has two characters, second years. I mean, in the first season, the big tentpole poles of the show are the third years and the first years. So Onoda, Maizumi, and Naruko, for the who's the sprinter, hot-headed sprinter, are the first years, or the big first years who are important and join the team for the Interhigh. And then you get the third years with Makishima, Tadoroko, and Kinjo. And you got mostly actions between those factions, because those are the senpais. They're there too to stay, teach them the shit, and they know what's up. And then you got the young hotshots who try to become part of the team and everything. And that's the dynamic that's mostly part of the first two seasons. Like, the first years coming into their own, becoming a part of the team and everything, and the third years taking over and bringing the team to victory, which they weren't able to do in the year before that. But there are also the second years in there, like I said, we get a small part in the training camp by helping the first years get through that, but they're not that important at that moment in the story. But as it is with high school, after your third year, you leave. So after the second season, and with the start of new generation, Kinjo and the others leave the team, which brings its own set of problems with it, because, Onoda and Makishima form a very strong connection. Like, he is like Makishima is the role model for Onoda. He's like the anchor for him. He teaches him everything about climbing. He teaches him everything about bicycles. He is like the thing that Onoda looks up to. And then after, the third year is over, Makishima leaves for college in a different country, I think France. So that puts Onoda in the dark place and makes him question, oh, what am I going to do now? How can I can't do this alone. What the fuck, right? So that's also an interesting part. So like I said, they always bring new stuff in there to have characters face different difficult situations that don't feel forced, because, that's a thing that would happen for that character and would make him question things and, question his place in life and everything. And if he forms such a strong bond, then that person disappears from his life. What is he going to do? Like, how is he going to react to that? Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's an interesting part. But like I mentioned, the two characters, the two second years, that had not a big part in the first two seasons and were mainly support, now of course become third years and thus become the captains of the team and have now a completely new set of responsibilities and story opportunities facing them, and opportunities for character development, which I'm glad to report the show like picks up and runs with it and tells interesting stories with that and focuses on these characters. And it's cool. And it's like, hey, we've seen these characters before. Show hasn't done that much with it, but now they become important. And we're already kind of familiar with them, but now we really get to learn about these characters, and they become the focus of the show and really kind of like sometimes even the main characters. And that's cool. I really like that. I really like that the show just did an early setup for these characters, but waited until it made sense to introduce them properly, or, give them their place in the spotlight. And yeah, then it ran with it. So yeah, good stuff. It's like really good build up to all of this. And, of course, there's the different rivalries between different teams. For example, Mijusuji and Imaizumi have like this relationships because they knew themselves each other from middle school, and the last time they raced each other, Mijusuji beat Imaizumi, or he always beat him, and he really treats him like an asshole because he's a villain. He calls him Yowaizumi, which of course is then appropriately translated as weak Zumi. But yeah, what a diss, man. But yeah, that's that is in there, of course. Then you got the rivalry between the two captains, between Kinjo and Tomi, I think, from Hakone High School. And there was some drama happening with those two in the last Inter-High and everything. So yeah, that's all that cool stuff. Like all of these characters introduced matter in some way and have an interesting story to tell. I mean, not all of them. Some are just in there to be, okay, here's the villain of this part of the race and everything, and they don't do much with that. But a lot of the characters matter and are important to the development of our main characters. And yeah, that's cool. And like I said, the racing itself is super anime. You got super crazy action scenes. Every time a character just fucking goes all out and just like hits the pedals like a madman, we get like this gust of wind like emanating from his person. Like it looks like he's driving through a wall of water or something. It's crazy, and you get like this big sound swoosh that's just like hammered in your face, and it's super good just in terms of getting you riled up and getting you invested, and has these amazing comeback moments where the characters are down and then find a thing to latch onto and fucking go for it and go for the finish line. And that's, if you're easily manipulatable by that kind of emotional tricks,
raise his hand,
yes, then that show will work you like a fucking puppet. Because there's so many moments in the show where I just was short of yelling "fuck yeah," and I did in certain places. And I can't forget this. Jesus Christ! An integral part in this to make this work is the music in this show, because the soundtrack of Yowamushi Pedal is one of the best anime soundtracks I've ever heard. It's fantastic. I mean, you could say, looking from the outside in, it's like this standard mix of rock and strings, but I don't think, aside from maybe Hero Academia in recent times, I have not seen a show that uses music so well to highlight the best comeback moments in the show so well. I can't name all the melodies that gave me goosebumps in the specific scenes. The composer is Kan Sawada, who has mainly done the music for Doraemon up to this point. But Jesus Christ, this soundtrack, like, go to YouTube and listen to it, and I bet you can find at least 4 songs in the first soundtrack that you can imagine one of these crazy comeback scenes to, and immediately you will be engaged, because these songs are amazing. They are so fist-pumpingly great. I love the soundtrack to the show so much. Every time the show needs to hit all the high notes, it does. It's just fantastic. And again, high emotions, high drama, and the music emphasizes that in a perfect way. It's so good. I want to ride this hype train even longer, but I think it being the simple show and simple setup that it is, I can't tell you much more about Yowamushi Pedal to explain why I love it so much. I mean, I could go more into details on how the races develop and everything, but that doesn't really matter because it's kind of a standard fare, and in certain parts you can expect or imagine how things will go at a certain point. But again, that doesn't detract from the way the show makes you feel and gets you engaged, because that lies in all the other things the show has to offer. And that's why also it doesn't matter that some of the races feel too long, or sound like they're too long. Because you get engaged with the characters, you get engaged with the interaction between the different teams and everything, and you just get engaged with the characters giving their all to reach that fucking finish line, and the hurdles they have to face. Just in general, this is one of those shows, just like Food Wars, that always manages to put me in a good mood. Like, anytime I watch it, it's just super fun. It's just a fun, happy-go-lucky show that gives you this warm, fuzzy blanket every time you watch it. Like, it's just, I feel so good watching the show. And even though, I mean, there are some darker moments in there, like I said, when Makishima leaves the team, for example, when, when there's this change in generation, when during the races, of course, when something happens, someone gets hurt, or, someone loses, or whatever. But the show mostly stays like fluffy, feel-good, fist in the air sports action with a lot of let's go moments, a bit of drama when the cast changes, like I said. But that's also cool because the underused characters become important. There is just so much good stuff in the show that kept me engaged and got me endeared to these characters and make me want to keep going and keep watching it, that I just can't say anything really bad about it. Maybe the girl characters are just, it's a shame they're kind of a side staff in this and don't really get any development besides being maybe love interests at some point in the future. But yeah, this is kind of shonen show through and through, and this is more about the friendship between the boys and the bonds you build through a common interest in high school and overcoming the hurdles put in your way and growing through all those experiences as a person. And if that is not a thing, if you want something deeper, if you want something more gritty, I can totally understand that. Then the show is maybe not for you. But if you want just a lighthearted, uncomplicated, fun, engaging, heartfelt story, go for it. I know it's a lot of episodes, and I mean, you could just hop in there and check it out. Like I said, it's not a complicated story, and you get a feel for the characters pretty fast, because a lot of them are stereotypes, but still. But if you want to see those relationships build and all the side characters probably introduced, which is important in my opinion, you should start at the beginning, especially considering it's a kind of big cast at this point. But yeah, man, I love Yowamushi Pedal. I think it's a fantastic shonen sports show, and I can't recommend it highly enough. If you love crazy bullshit sports anime with big emotions, super sympathetic characters, good visuals, fantastic music that can always put you in a good mood, please check it out. You won't be disappointed. I promise you that. And that is a wrap on the 58th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to vrt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for some interesting articles linked in our episode release posts. Follow us on Twitter at @AnimeBrainFreeze. We tweet regular updates and fun anime-related stuff there. Leave us comments and questions on Facebook and our YouTube channel, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next show. Macht's gut.
So long, everybody. Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
Teenagers fucking in the cockpits of their giant mechs. Yep. That's it. Nothing more to see here. Carry on. Hi. Why are you still here? Leave. Go.